Hello everyone. Welcome to this Q&A with Jacqueline Baylon, the director of Until He's Back. My name's Jeanie Finlay. I'm an artist and filmmaker, and I'm joining you from the city of Rebels, Nottingham, in the centre of the United Kingdom. I have ginger, wavy hair for our visually impaired and low vision viewers. I have ginger, wavy hair, and some of it's tied up, kind of messy. I'm wearing a black dress with poofy sleeves and a French embroidery of a hand on my chest. And behind me is the cello I started playing when I was 7 years old. And I'll just hand over to Jacqueline so she can describe herself.
Hi everyone, I'm Jacqueline Baylon and I am the director and producer of Until He's Back. I am a Mexican light-skinned woman with brown hair and brown eyes. I'm wearing a striped shirt, and behind me is a plant, a mirror, and a lamp and a white wall.
So I'm so happy that we're able to have this discussion today, Jacqueline. For the audience, you already know this, but I was on the jury at Big Sky Documentary Film Festival back in February, and I was judging the mid-length. Is it the mid-length documentaries?
You
Which
might
you're
say that because of my film, but it's actually the shorts.
Oh, it's the short documentaries. And we awarded your film the prize of best short at the festival, and I was delighted that the film won. It just is such a rich, moving film. And I'm delighted that we get this opportunity to really like dig into it and find a bit more about the filmmaking process. So I'd really like to know, how did the film come to you? What was the impetus to make this project? And what did that look like once you knew that this was the project you were going to make?
Yeah, well, it was a long journey, just as, the film itself takes you through a very long and sort of complicated process. But I've been splitting my time between the US and Spain for the last few years. And my background is actually in journalism. So I'm a journalist, and I usually cover immigration and migration issues. It's something that I've just sort of taken, that has sort of like I've taken sort of as like the thing to do. As somebody who crossed the Rio Grande when I was 6 years old and lived in the United States undocumented and was deported and came back and somehow figured out how to stay in the United States. I don't know, I've always felt like I need to be that person to tell these really difficult stories because I have like firsthand experience. So then when I started spending all this time in Spain, it was really shocking to see that they were dealing with the same exact things that like the issues that Americans are and Mexicans are dealing with, or people coming from, Latin America and sort of like the US not knowing what to do. And I was just really shocked that this was also happening in Spain, but the journeys that people were taking from crossing the Mediterranean, and I just kept on seeing headline after headline about the number of bodies that appeared on like the shores, or just it was just also just like numbers of like people who died. And I never saw any report going deeper than that. So I was always really curious as to like, who are these people? Who are their loved ones left behind? And so that was sort of like piqued my interest. And then in that process, I came across a profile of the mortician. And I was just really, really fascinated that he'd spent the last 25 years working with Morocco specifically. He This is a mortician who returns the bodies of the migrants who die at sea and who actually appear on the the Spanish shores. And so I first approached him, asking him if he would allow me to film his process and his work, and he was open to it. And so that's sort of the very beginning of this. It's just sort of me being interested in the topic, me sort of coming across articles about it, and then finding the article about this mortician and being like, I don't think people really know or understand what it means to return a body home, you know? So yeah.
And how did you know? So you connected with the mortician. How did you know that the boy who is the focus of the film, when did you know and how did you know that that was going to be your focus? That his
Yeah,
story was going to be the focus? Because it's
no,
such an important choice to make.
yeah, no, totally. So I had been spending a lot of time with the mortician, and it was just very clear that it just took like a small village for him to be able to do the work that he does. You know, the bodies just don't appear, you know, they don't magically just, you know, show up and then he's able to pick them up and then he's able to return them. It's a much longer process than that. And so when I was filming with him, I noticed that he was in touch with a woman named Maria Angeles a lot. And eventually, when I felt like I had enough trust, I asked him, well, you know, Maria Angeles seems to be sort of like feeding you a lot of like information and sort of telling you when the Guardia Civil, sort of like the immigration services in Spain, has, you know, has a body. And so after time, he trusted me enough to introduce me to her. So then I started interviewing her over the phone and talking to her and understanding that she was trying to launch an NGO that basically was trying to connect families with people who have made it and families with people who hadn't made it, who didn't make it. And so I started asking her if I could film with her next. And she, after, you know, building that trust, she allowed me. And then that was sort of how I figured out that I would eventually have access to families. And it was after that that I started traveling to Morocco to start filming with these families that had been looking for their loved ones for like a year, 2 years. And what was like really shocking is that people still believe that their kids are alive because they didn't get they don't have a body, so they're like mentally still thinking that their son is alive. And so it was during one of those trips that Maria Angeles, sorry, Maria Angeles called us. I was with Faisal, another person who is a volunteer in the NGO who was helping with also with translations, and he just was the person, the connection between Spain and Morocco. And I was with him, and he got a call from Maria Angeles who said, three bodies just showed up, and I need you to go say, you know, I need you to go talk to the family. And so we did, and we went and talked to the family, and that's how I first met Ahmed. And I knew that this was sort of an opportunity to be able to show the story from the very beginning of when this unfortunate thing happens. And so, yeah, then the next thing was like seeing if Ahmed would let me be part of this like terrible journey, especially because he just found out that his kid, you know, died, and he wanted to bring him home. So, yeah.
So you're obviously you're swimming in very sort of complex waters in terms of consent, in terms of working with a family who have discovered that their child is actually dead. Can you talk about how you navigated the complex consent with the family in particular? You know, was this something that you had a procedure for already set up, or was it something that evolved through listening to the families? I think it's something that is very, you know, we live in the golden age of documentary where true crime and there's a body count in a lot of films. So I'm interested in how you navigated this very different space.
Yeah, so it wasn't easy because I speak Spanish, but I don't speak Darija. So I was wondering how am I going to explain what I'm trying to do and why I think it's you know, why I think it's important, you know, for them to be open to sharing their story. You know, it obviously it sounds like very maybe like crude for me to say it that way, but it was kind of like one of these things where this isn't something that happens, all the time. And in that, like, people don't actually understand that this happens. So I honestly think that it was through a lot of talking with Faisal and him sort of basically being the translator for me and basically just seeing, like, you know, I also had spent at this time several months with Faisal. So it started with sort of Faisal being the one who trusted me and him being able to sort of introduce me to these families and then talking to these families in this like really horrible moment. And then it was sort of a kind of one of those magical things that kind of happens to you sometimes when you're a documentarian, that you meet somebody and you just kind of know, or you just trust. And I think me and Ahmed had like a really special connection from the beginning. I think I tried being as sincere and as honest as I possibly could with just facial or me pointing or me sort of like saying, touching my heart a lot, in that like I feel what he not exactly what he's going through, but like
Mm.
I know that this is painful and that I wanted to be there for him in the little ways that I could. And then yeah, so then it was a lot of sort of Faisal asking always, is it okay for us to film? Is it okay for us to film? Are you okay? And along with the crew, I think Ahmed really, I've worked with a really fantastic crew, cinematographers from Barcelona who also were just incredibly gentle. And one thing that I really took to heart was when we were filming is to not get in get in people's faces, right? Like the situation is dramatic enough. We don't need to be in their face. And I think Ahmed just sort of recognized that we were all extremely careful and sensitive to his needs. So yeah, I hope that
Yeah,
answered your question.
I think it does, and I think that that care is very evident in the material that we're seeing as the audience. Can you talk to me about filming the funeral process and the sort of complexities involved in that of being a woman in that space? Um, yeah, how did you go about it? What were the choices that you made?
Yeah, absolutely. So, this was sort of, a learning process for me too. I grew up Catholic. I don't practice any religion now, but I grew up Catholic, and I was filming Ahmed, who him and his family are Muslim. So I was learning a lot in the process, doing a lot of research, doing a lot of reading, and one of the things that I came to realize was that women are not allowed in the cemetery. So I when it came to the when we knew that Yahya was actually gonna make his way home, I wasn't sure if we were gonna be able to if I was gonna be able to partake in the funeral. And I also had a woman cinematographer. So I it was it was kind of like I wasn't sure what was gonna happen, but at that point I had, had this relationship with Ahmed for about 8 months. And I'd seen him a lot. I'd been talking to him through a translator on WhatsApp. I think like when it came to the actual day of the funeral, Yahya's body comes home first because that's where his mother and his grandmother and all the women and his fiance were able to finally like pay respect. But then after that, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to go to the funeral. But I think that after spending all that time with Ahmed, I think he understood sort of like the importance that us filming and being there for the funeral. And it kind of went without saying, as soon as we got to the mosque, he asked the imam if they let me in, and they let me in. So, and Carmen, the cinematographer. So we were yeah, it was just really beautiful to be able to share that experience and be there for him, and him being able to finally say goodbye to his son. And I was grateful that I will say that I think it also helped that I was a Western woman. I do think like it's not lost on me that if I were Muslim, it's very possible that they had to follow the rules. So I do think
Mm.
that there is a little bit of rule bending because I was Western.
Yeah, I think that there's a complex soup of things going on here with being an outsider. But also I think it's testimony to the care that you took. Now we've almost run out of time, so I just want to ask, there's one last question, is the thing that I really think about when I think about this film is I feel like you raised a ghost. I feel like you didn't see the boy who'd been lost, but you felt his presence in every frame. And I found that incredibly moving and it lingered with me. And I want you to just talk briefly about the choices that you made around that, about how you portrayed the boy, but the visual choices that you made. I think there's like the final shot of the fairground ride and you're seeing the boat. There's all this mirroring and echoing going on. So yeah, if you could.
Yeah, yeah, no, thank you. You are an incredible artist, and I'm so glad that you've noticed all those things. There have been just a couple people that were like, I want to understand the ending a little bit more, and I'm like, ah. Um, but so during filming, I was constantly looking for a picture of Yahya, or I was looking for little hints of him, and I didn't exactly find like an actual photo on the last day. Like on the day of the funeral, his fiance showed me a picture of him, and that was maybe the first time that I'd seen him. But
Mm,
throughout my entire experience, I felt that I knew him, even though I didn't know him. But I'd been hearing all his father talk about him, and I'd been in his house, I'd been in his bedroom, I'd been sort of in all these places that I'd make sure to film as if he were there. And when it
mm,
came to the edit and working really closely with Haley Gavin, the editor, and the crazy storyboarding that we did, it was very evident that he was there, even though we never actually saw him. And I never thought of showing his photo even after we filmed it. It just like didn't really fit. And in the end, it kind of worked out beautifully with, I always knew that we were going to end in the carnival, actually. Like that was just one of those like director producer things that like when you're there, it doesn't always work out that way, but it did in this case. And that like when I was there, I knew like this was the end. And I had actually filmed portraits of a lot of different boys, but in like we saw their face, and that was sort of like originally one thought that I had of ending, but then when I saw that boy standing and just looking at the roller coaster, and like it had like the movement of a boat, and I mean I was just like, oh my God. It was just one of those things that it could have been Yahya, or it could be the next person sort of thinking of doing this. So yeah, I hope that answered the question a little bit, and that like when in the process of filming, I was in all these spaces where he was. So I just try to make sure and direct the cinematographers for us to capture anything that may represent him. And then I
mm.
made sure that in the edit that was sprinkled throughout. And then of course his father is constantly talking about him. So yeah.
Oh yeah, it works so brilliantly. It's so elegant and just so evocative. It's a film that has stayed with me for throughout the year. And I'm so thrilled to see that audiences are responding to the film as well. So huge congratulations and good luck with the screenings that you have to come in the coming months. It's so exciting to see the journey of it all.
Thank you, Jeanie, so much.